good afternoon, and welcome to Frecuencias, bajas, charlas musicales, episode 144 in our special English edition. We are very happy again being here 1 week and with this space who start in May 2020. And as we always say, we are very happy that we still being here and still sending every week, and to have also the opportunity to share with our audience, of course, in Spanish. And now, since we start with the English edition with different artists around the world, as you can see in the screen, we have another guest. We are going to introduce him in a few minutes, and we are very happy to have you all on the other side. Welcome, and thank you all who are getting us in YouTube and Facebook today. I don't know why, but Instagram is not working, so we are going to be live there. And before we start, and before I introduce my partner in crime, remember to subscribe my YouTube channel and click on the subscribe on the bell to don't miss any of the episodes from Frecuencias. And now, as every week, David Lopez, how are you doing? How is everything in Washington? It's snowing.
Thank you very much. It's not snowing. It's a very sunny day. We moved our clock forward this past Sunday, so dates are starting to get longer. Some of the flowers in my backyard and in my front yard are blooming, so
Nice.
things are looking up. I should say, like, for me, after almost 13 years of being in the US, one of the hardest things is winter. Winter is always tough for me. I grew up in Colombia. Colombia doesn't have seasons. We just have rainy and dry seasons. And one of the things that it's been the hardest for me to adapt to is the daylight shrinking in the winter. It gets shorter. When you're in the tropic, when you're on the equator line, sunrise is at 6 a.m., sunset is at 6:30. So you always have that nice 12, 13 hours of light. And you don't have to think much about it because it doesn't change much. The winter, though, even though I'm not at the very northern part of the US, but I'm in the middle, day gets shorter, so that entitles like a bunch of seasonal, they call it seasonal depression, and I firmly believe that happens because it's been happening to me consistently for the past 12 years. So now that the day is bright, that the days are getting longer, like things are starting to look up, for some reason you get a lot happier. So
That's nice, but let me tell you that yesterday morning here in Germany snowed for about 4 hours, and then in the afternoon blue skies and sunshine. That was crazy. It's like changing all the time.
So I'm very happy to be here today and to have a guest. I know we have this special edition once a month in English, and I like to take this as an opportunity also to meet more people. Like we were talking to Andreas off camera that you need to learn English, like if you want to access more information, if you want to access more people. But I also like to use this opportunity for our audience in Latin America to have like a practice session in English, like people speaking English, speaking about music, and also like so they can see how lucky people that have a second language are whenever it comes to connecting and creating like new connections, and networking, like they call it in English. So very happy to
Definitely.
be here.
So let me introduce our guest. His name is Andreas Lackner. He is a professor for trumpet and the conservatorium in Innsbruck, in Austria. But also he have a particular career because he's a brass band conductor, and he don't conduct just one brass band, he conduct two brass bands. He conduct the Red Eagle Tirol Brass Band, and he conduct the CatchBasinBrassBand Band, which it is a youth brass band who is a double Europa champion for the last two championships that we have had in 2019 and last year in 2022 in Birmingham, in England. And for us, this is a huge pleasure to have him and to welcome him here in Frecuencias. Andreas, good evening. Nice to have you here.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. I'm very lucky to speak with you next hour.
That's great. So, as David said, you was telling us that you came already from rehearsal, a sectional with the baritone euphonium players of the Red Eagle Tirol. My first question is how a performer who play Baroque trumpet ended conducting two brass bands and going to the European Brass Band Championships. That is very interesting.
It is actually. So hopefully it's not ending here because I still play Baroque trumpet and I'm still leading Baroque ensembles. But I started about 14 years ago with our youth band. And then later on, I founded the Red Eagles, which is an adult band. And we taking part first time this year at the European Championships in Champions section with the Red Eagles. So how did it work? Actually, the reason why I founded the brass band was a workshop in Venezuela. I came with some friends to El Sistema in Venezuela, and we did a workshop there. So when we arrived there, it was an open air area where all the lessons and all the rehearsals and everything take place. And we arrived there, and these young guys, there were about 150 guys on stage in an open air stage, and they played Dvorak, Ninth Symphony, and it was so full of energy and full of power and full of. I really was speechless then when I saw this, and then we worked for 10 days with them, and then we saw. There was really fantastic orchestra, but maybe half of the kids didn't play everything which was written in the music, but as a collective, as a group, they were so strong, and then the good ones take the not so good ones, and it worked perfectly. So then I decided I have to found a group for my brass kids and for the percussion kids. And I was actually back in the 80s, I was a founding member of brass band Hall, which is one of the Austrian brass bands. I played soprano in that band. And this was also the time when I founded the youth band, when the European Championships took place in Linz, in Austria. So I was driving there and listened to all these bands, Corrie Band and Black Dyke and Valencia and all these bands. And then I decided, so that's it. I do brass band. And then I went back home, and then I founded a brass band with no brass band instruments, with a lot of colleagues who thought I am getting crazy, and then we started. And so the first rehearsals were about 25 trumpet players, maybe 2 tenor horn players, 1 trombone, 1 percussion player, 1 tuba. So this how it started. And then over the years, the first instruments I bought out of my money, because nobody wanted to buy some tenor horns in E flat. So I called an instrument dealer and said, I need 3 tenor horns in E flat. And he said, yeah, okay. So then I paid it on my own. And when the director of the music school came to the next rehearsal, he said, "So, whom do these instruments belong?" And I said, "It's mine." And I said, "No, this is not possible. You cannot pay." So I pay you for this instrument. So and that's how it started.
Man, it's so exciting to hear you talking about this for two things that I take from the conversation so far. The first one is like the power of the brass band itself. Like whenever you hear a brass band, you are like taken away. You're like, this is it. This is how it should sound. This is what I want to do. So every time, like I still remember the first time I heard like a brass band ensemble, I couldn't believe like the wall of sound that it produces. And the second one, the second thing that I take from your what you just told us is like the importance of starting to do something. Like of course, like if you wait for everything to be perfect, things are never going to happen. So just the fact that you started with such an unbalanced ensemble, and over the years it started to get like more like a brass band, buying new instruments, is a testimony that you have to start somewhere, and then luckily in the way like people are going to start believing what you saw before it all started, and they start joining. And of course, like it is not the first time I hear somebody say like I have to buy some instruments and I have to put from my own money in order to make it happen. So that's also like a testimony of, like things have to start somewhere, and you need to pay your dues literally and figuratively to make a project like this happen.
Yeah, and don't wait till somebody gives you some money or till somebody says, "Yeah, please start." If you have the idea in your mind, go for it, and don't. And that one reason also why I choose brass band is these brass band instruments are going so close together. And this is what I know from playing on Baroque instruments, because on Baroque instruments, an oboe and a trumpet is so close, and sometimes you cannot say, is it an oboe or is it a trumpet? And the same I thought is when you hear these brass band instruments. So it's so close. The sound is going from one register to the next, is going together. And so this is what I was interested in. This is the reason why I started doing this.
For me, from what Andreas is telling us about how everything starts, there are two things I pick up, and one of them is that people who do things, they will point from other people to crazy people at the first, and then they see what they reach and they say, oh, that is not possible. And the second thing is this impression, what Andreas described, what he have had in Linz when he listened to the Europeans, because it was the same with me. I was sitting there in 2016, I think, in the Sherman Nationals, and Brickhouse came and played a concert. And I was sitting there waiting for my first time live for the UK brass band, and I was there and thinking as a professional player, how good can be. I mean, Sherman Brass, I have listened a lot of, and that was blown mind. It was like, what is happening here? And if you think these guys, they have 8-hour shops, and they travel 1.5 hours to rehearse 2 hours and come back twice a week. That is just amazing. We was talking behind the cameras about this with Andreas, and it is just amazing. But Andreas, how is because you are conducting a adult band who is going to the championship division, and you are conducting the youth band. How is the work you need to do to manage so much people at the same time, with different levels in terms of professional players and young players, and how do you manage to, get them motivated and, push for this competition thinking? Because sometimes it's difficult to bring the players to think it is not a normal concert. We need to go on stage and be on fire,
Yeah, it's not easy, I have to say. But it's quite easy with the young guys, because they are so interested in everything they get, and but it's with the adults it's much more complicated, because they have their life, they have their job, they have their family, and it's much more difficult. And to go to a competition like this, you really have to work so hard to because nobody wants to become last one. So you really have to fight. But it brings the point is that it brings the band forward. It's not so important which place we will have in this competition, but we will get better for a preparation for this competition. And that's the point, I think.
But it's interesting that you say it is not easy, because sometimes people think that this kind of project it is easier because it's a competition and the players have the mindset to get and compete. But it's not always like it's
No,
not everyone pushing
yeah,
in the same way.
You always have players in the band who think competition and music doesn't fit together. Maybe it's not a good idea, and how can you judge music playing? But I think I love playing competitions, and I do a lot of competitions with my students, and they have to learn it, because if they want to become professional players in an orchestra, what do they have to do? They have to do auditions, and then they have to go through that. So this is the thing. And
I love what you're saying about this, talking about competition up front. Sometimes you hear musicians says like, "Oh well, musicians are no horses. This is not a competition." But and then you point out,
listen, some musicians can be horses, depending.
even donkeys, if you might, if you want to say so. But my point here is that as Andreas was saying, like, the audition circuit, that's a competition. I mean, if you show up for an audition for a major orchestra or a major band, like for example here in the US, you're gonna face like 50 people. And so tell me, if that's not an example of competition, I don't know what else is. And here's the thing, like, many of the players can play the rhythms and can play the sounds very well, So what is it that is gonna make you different to win that job? And that's when that little small, like, detail oriented word comes in play. And especially for a brass band, like, I can imagine for those competitions, like, the attention to detail and to like everything that makes the band sound at those levels is just incredible. So I'm glad, Andreas, that you mentioned in this competition and how it could be a good thing. And the other thing is that I also grew up in a competitive environment. Like, coming from Colombia, we have the national band, wind band, not brass band, but wind band competition. And it gets pretty interesting once everybody is like at the major competition. There were two in my time, and everybody knew who would win it. Everybody knew who was going to be there, and everybody was preparing hard to be able to win those. So competition is a good thing, and I think it starts setting good goals for everyone. And not to extend my intervention much more, but from those competitions, you started learning at an individual level that you need to get better individually too. So it also inspired many of us to start seeking like private lessons and putting our instruments in our mouths more often. So there's a lot of benefits to that.
Yeah.
So Andreas, one question I have, it is in terms, we have had different guests here who or people on the audience who ask us if it is playing different brass instrument, it is a problem long term and is going to produce any damage. And I hope I am not wrong. You correct me if it is so, but I think you have many trumpet students that also play tenor horn, or in the band have people who are studying, like Antonia Capellari, for example. I know this case. She's what I have listened for her. She's a wonderful tenor horn player, but she's actually a trumpet player studying to be a professional trumpet. So, how is your opinion on that matter, and how you do you manage? Because in the brass world, it is also very typical that players change in some situations when the band needs players in some positions. So
yeah. So the tenor horn doesn't exist in Austria. So we have no tenor horn players. And because you mentioned Antonia, when she was my student, she began to play the trumpet with, I think, 10, and then she was my student from 10 to 20, so 10 years long. And when we started the band, I needed tenor horn players, and then she was a quite wild girl with 10, and I was very easy playing, and I thought, so maybe this could be a nice idea. Her brother was the principal cornet, and then I said to her, so if you play the tenor horn, you may play a solo at the Christmas concert. And when she heard solo, she said yes.
Absolutely.
And that was it. And from that time on, she played trumpet and tenor horn. So she really began to play trumpet and tenor horn with 10 years. And then I brought her up till she finished school. And then she went to Vienna to study trumpet. And so now she can switch between these both instruments. And she's a wonderful trumpet player. She's playing a brilliant natural trumpet, and she's an incredible tenor horn player. And I have a younger student. He's now 15. He's principal tenor horn in CatchBasinBrassBand Band. He also is a trumpet player, really good technical player, not the best sound. And I thought maybe I tried a tenor horn. He is a brilliant tenor horn player. Really, it's much better. It's much better than the trumpet mouthpiece. So I try to find guys who are good players to get some tenor horn players. Last week we always have a youth competition. It's Prima la Musica. It's the youth competition. 1 year is solo competition, the other year is ensemble. And this year was solo competition for the brass players. And I said to Raphael, he's the tenor horn player, so we take part on that competition, but with the tenor horn. But there is no possibility tenor horn doesn't exist. So it's trumpet and French horn and tenor horn and euphonium and tuba, but no tenor horn. So, but then it's written euphonium and tenor horn, but they mean the tenor horn in B flat, of course. So I thought, yeah, it's a tenor horn. So, and then he played last week and he did brilliant. He got the first prize and everything fine. So the judges were really surprised when he came in with his tenor horn in E flat, but it was nice because he played perfect, and so they were no problems and so I yeah, that's how I try to establish this instrument in Austria, because if you want to do brass band, you need good players on tenor horn, of course.
That's true. And let me tell our audience who don't know which is Prima la Musica. It is a competition for young players into 18 years old, right?
Yeah, till 19.
19. And there are all students, or young students from music schools in Austria and Germany. Exists something quite same.
It starts, I think, with 7 or 8 years, and it's going up till 19. So also young students from universities can take part.
Yeah, that's great. That's a nice system, because they get the chance, to have goals and develop.
Yeah.
David.
So now, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds to me like you were one of the pioneers for the brass band movement in Austria. Like, how's the stage of brass band movement in Austria? Like, do you guys have a lot of brass bands, or were there a lot whenever you started?
Actually, the founder of brass band in Austria was Hannes Buchecker. So he founded the first brass band in about, I don't know, I was part of it, 86 or 87, something like that. This was Brass Band Fröschelhall, which was the first one. And then later on, he founded the Brass Band Oberösterreich, which is now, I think they had 20 years this year. And then, but there never existed a youth brass band. And so I had the idea of, we need a youth brass band, because without youth, it's not growing. So now we have the situation this year. So there's in our area in Austria, there are at the moment 3 champion section bands. And then in Südtirol, we have Brass Band Sterzing and Brass Band Überetsch. So it's 5 brass bands and CatchBasin. And then there's one in the west in Vorarlberg. It's also a brass band. And in all 7 bands, former CatchBasin people were playing. Also in Brass Band Oberösterreich, CatchBasin people. So in all the 8 bands, from the last 14 years, people from the youth band are playing there. So what do we need? More youth brass bands.
Yeah.
That's exactly the way, because if you don't have people coming from the bottom, then as you say, it's a dead end.
Yeah, well, it's always, there's no tradition of brass band playing in Austria, so we have to. It's nice to have 3 champion section bands, but it's so hard when one euphonium player stops playing, then you have to look in whole Austria to find another one. It's not like in England that 10 people are standing, knocking on your door and going, may I? So
yeah, look what happened this week with Black Dyke. Thomas retired or moved to a new shop, and in 3 days
they
had a new one.
They have a new one.
And I bet with a high level of performance, course. So it's very interesting. And then I'm always very interested about the logistics of this kind of ensembles. So now that you've been playing for a few years, what's the situation with the instruments? Like, do the kids have to buy their instruments? Is there like this tradition enough that they come and buy their instruments, or does the band provide some of it? Like, how does that work at an organizational level, to say?
It's so when I changed from our traditional instruments to the brass band instruments, I asked all the parents, would you buy so then I bought, I think, 15 cornets on eBay. I went to eBay UK and looked so cornet, and then I bought and I knew, okay, this Yamaha is a nice is good working, and some Besson and stuff, and I bought everything. And then I had the luck that after a while the director of the music school, he saw that this is a wonderful project. So then he began to support all this. He bought 3 baritones, and he bought 2 euphoniums, and then it started. And then we did, when we started with RET, we have been the first band in the area who bought English E-flat and B-flat tubas, because all the bands played on our rotary tubas. So, but I decided the sound is different. I need English tubas. So we have been 5 guys in the Red Eagle band, and we decided, okay, we take a credit from the bank, and we buy 4 tubas, and then what is a Bürger? I don't know the English word for Bürger. So we had to sign for the bank that they give us the money, and then we had to declare that if the band cannot pay back, we have to pay back from our private money.
Insurance.
You have like
so,
a lien.
And now we have these 4 tubas for RET, and RET also gives the 4 tubas to CatchBasinBrassBand. So we share the tubas, so that also CatchBasin can play on this English tubas.
That's nice.
And yeah, so I have a lot of guys I play from CatchBasin play in RET, and I always speak a lot with them, and then many of them buy really super instruments and buy Besson and whatever.
Yeah, I also feel like once you are in the brass band movement, like it's like those people that have are like car aficionados or like certain things, they start investing on it. I feel like the same happens with people that meet the brass band world. Like at first they play the trumpet, and then they realize that I need a cornet, and the same happens with the baritones and the tenor horns, and then with the tuba players, you realize like, man, okay, like I could play this with a C tuba, but it's not the same. So many of them start making that jump, even though it is more expensive, but at the end it's worth it, because you start like building that sound that you talk about, like that characteristic sound of having both B flat and E flat tubas, English style, of course.
Yeah, because even the Sherman B flat tubas, they don't sound like the B flat tubas, the English B flat tubas. There are more. They are pointing more, and the E flat B flat tubas from England, there are more wider sounds. So it is kind of It is also important, as David say, for building this brass band sound, which is what you say at the beginning, that the different instruments that are melting together on sound.
I would say it's a lot easier to support a whole band with a B flat tuba than with a C tuba, right?
For sure. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, granted, once you learn how to blow that thing, because it is considerably better,
Could be a problem. Yeah.
But once you have the mechanics down, like building the band from the bottom is going to be a lot easier. And I talk about tubas because we're tuba players, but I think the same applies for every instrument, and the color they want in the ensemble is just amazing.
Yeah, and it's really hard for our traditional trumpet players to play the cornet. Oh, this causes trouble, a lot of trouble.
And why, if I may ask?
Yeah, I'm interested in the explanation.
I mean, you are the expert. You are the trumpet player. I mean,
yeah, but I'm not a cornet player. They have to play. I only beat them. No, I think that the big difference is that on trumpet you have a Kesselmundstück,
a Monfils who is not like a V.
yeah,
It's more round.
Hornet,
Oh,
you have
okay.
really a conical, like a
Y-
flugelhorn, a horn, and then on the trumpet, it's going close. So you have
Yeah.
more resistance.
Oh, okay.
If you're looking for this resistance on the cornet, then you drive against the wall. So it's really so it's really a good school of letting your air so that the air floats.
Flow.
Really, yeah, that's really good. So this is the reason why I have no, because a lot of colleagues say, but how can you let your students play natural trumpet and cornet and all these different instruments? So it will damage the embouchure, and but I think it's the opposite is the case, because if they learn to work with their air, then they can play everything. And it can happen. A student of mine became solo trumpet in the opera in Hamburg. And then he came there, and one of his first project has been a Mozart opera. And the conductor, Ken Nagano, asked him, "Can you play that on the natural trumpet?" So, and I prepared him in my studies. When he studied with me, I said, "You have to." And he said, "No, I don't want it, because I want to do my auditions, and I want to play the B flat and the C trumpet." And I said, "No, you have to." And then after that, when he was in Hamburg, he said, "Thank you that you really insisted that I play the natural trumpet."
That's very interesting, because we have been talking about the musicians in the 21st century probably for the last 50 episodes here, and telling and exchanging with different guests the necessity in the conservatories in terms of conservation, in terms of holding the tradition, to get forward to the 21st century and to help the students to be more, wider, have more opportunities, which is exactly what we need today.
Yeah, they have to be flexible. They have to there's so many really good young students and players. So you have to be flexible. It was when I started playing natural trumpet, I was in my studies. I never had I didn't know what a natural trumpet is. And my teacher said, asked, so I played one project because our choir director did with a boy choir Weihnachtshistorie from Schütz. And there is one aria for 2 trumpets. And he asked me and a colleague, "Can you play this aria on natural trumpets?" And I said, I don't know what a natural trumpet is. And so he gave me a natural trumpet 2 weeks before the first concert. And then we rehearsed, and it was okay. And in the concerts, it was a disaster, because we missed really many notes. And then 2 months later, my teacher, my professor asked me, "Do you play the natural trumpet?" And I said, "Yeah, I tried, but please, I have enough troubles on my B flat trumpet. I don't need." "Yeah, show me, play something for me." And I played the piece, Bach aria, I don't know. And I said, "Yeah, it's nice. I send you to Vienna. Next month, there's a project in Vienna in Musikverein in the Golden Hall." And I did only know it from television, from the New Year's concert with the Philharmonic. And I said, "Yeah, I want to go there. I've never been there, so it's nice." And what I want to say is, there was an opportunity for me, and I took it. And I saw, wow, this instrument is interesting. I love the sound. It fitted to my way of playing the trumpet. And then from that point on, I played in whole Europe on the natural trumpet. So it was going and going. And you have to take the opportunity as it comes. I never was thinking that I will become a professional trumpet player, because I started becoming a teacher in school. And then there was the opportunity, and my way of life was going around the corner and changed completely. And yeah.
That, man, that's a lovely story. I love that, because, you know, like music is full of those little moments where you are in the right place at the right time. But the most important thing is to be prepared to grab it, because what would have happened if you would have said no? Would be like, oh, I don't know how to do this. I'm not professional. Sometimes it only takes like the courage to do it once and realize that it might work, you know.
Yeah.
So and that you start building on the way. Like once you have that first opportunity, you say like, okay, this is working. I better start getting better and better, because I see like a way of making a living as a musician. And what Patricio was saying, and with your example, it exactly illustrates what we talk about in this space. Is like the musician that is very good at one single thing, you know, nowadays might not get the chance to do something else, especially because you were talking about young players. Young players are coming better and better with the years. I would say like they're playing at a higher level at younger ages. So you show up on an audition and there is this 16-year-old that is beating everybody and nobody knows where it comes from, you know. So the level is very interesting, and that has to be also with the tradition and the things that you start building. Like I bet the brass band players in Austria are a lot better now than they were whenever the brass band movement started, you know. So that makes sense too.
Yeah, for sure.
But at the same time, it is also important to remind our students that orchestral positions, you never know what is going to happen. It's like the lottery. You go to the audition and you can have the best day of your life, and the orchestra say, no, thank you. And that's it. And nobody knows certain if they are going to get into an orchestra. So getting the opportunity to control motor or skills into the business music make them probably more happier, because they don't need to leave the music. If you just focus on getting an orchestra and you don't get the goal, then you probably are going to quit at some point, because at some point you need to earn money to eat. So easy is that. So Andreas, and one thing that you commented that I agree is that some of your students who are, you know, changing between trumpet and tenor horn, they have a good technique. I have been in this brass band world about really immersed about 8 years. So, and I have kind of, it is not nobody need to be much intelligent to understand that if you play in a brass band with the repertoire and stuff, you develop a very high level of technique. What I don't understand is why in Europe, mainly Central Europe, there are no more brass bands in each school of music or university of music, because that will help the students to develop faster with a better technique than just playing the notes what we play to get into an orchestra. What is your opinion about that?
Yeah, this is also a reason why I started with brass band playing, because we in Austria and Germany also, our brass players have, so the first goal is big sound, and you do all these orchestral excerpts, and they are not very difficult in technique. And then you listen to this brass band music, and when I heard these things first, I thought, how should this work? I had
what is happening?
What's going on? And so I now, since nearly 15 years, I'm doing the youth band, and I see that the kids develop a technique which is fantastic. I have some players, they are playing now in Red Eagles, and they played 15 years ago in CatchBasin when they were 10 or 11 or whatever. And now they have a technique. This is fantastic. They would never have developed such a technique if they haven't played in a brass band, because they have to. There's not a question, do I want to, or you have to. You have to play these pieces, so you have to play, and then you practice, and then you're getting better, of course.
It's funny because also when you put a brass player who don't have really a closer relationship with brass band, who have this Central Europe education on playing, you sit them in for the first time in a brass band and they see, I don't know, to mention one piece, Vita in Aeternum or Fire in the Blood, this high, they say that is impossible to play. That's not possible to play. That is, don't ask me to play that. I cannot. You know.
But they can. They can. It's really. I am. Although I am training this band since 15 years, the youth band, I am surprised every rehearsal what they can do. If you listen to this recording when we played Fire in the Blood in Montreux when we were winning, it's amazing. I don't know. I have no idea how they do it, but they do it in a really brilliant way. It's fantastic. It's really fantastic.
Yeah, I was gonna say I still remember the first time I saw like an E flat tuba part, and I played it. I think I played more solos that season than all my life, because every second piece had an E flat tuba solo, and I was like, this is fantastic. Like I want to do this always. Like I want to play E flat always. And I remember how inspiring it was for me to come back to the practice room and be able to get at the level expected to perform those kind of pieces, because it's like almost treating it as a solo instrument, and for us tuba player that's a very rare opportunity in the orchestra world. In the wind band, like there is some pieces that feature the tuba, a few measures here and there, but in the brass band it's just like part of the language. So and it's a very good way to keep a young mind engaged with the instrument. So I also wonder, like Patricia wonders, why like the brass bands are not used more at a from a pedagogical sense in schools and universities.
I have no idea, because they did it in Switzerland. In Switzerland, there are really lots of brass bands and incredible well-playing brass bands. Best of when you see Lucerne or Valencia, they are fantastic, and I don't know, they developed it in the back in the late 60s, beginning of 70s. So they have now a much longer tradition than we have in Germany or in Austria.
That's David.
Okay, so I have another question, and this has to be with the logistics of these bands that you founded. At first you have to get everyone together, pay for instruments. How does the band support itself? Like, how do you maintain a rehearsal schedule? Because, I mean, I'm guessing that needs some sort of economical support, to do it. So where do you guys get the funding from, or how does that work?
So with the youth band, we are lucky that music school and the town, Innsbruck, supports the band. So they are paying for all the traveling and all this stuff. With RET, so with the Red Eagles, it's really hard, because the public support is
Little.
the the private support, as it works in the States, doesn't exist in Austria. So we don't get any private money, and so we have some concert fees. We do this, so we try to crowdfund to get money, but it's really so money and for a band like this is really hard for us. So we have no sponsor, so we are always on the edge of be or not to be. It's really hard. Also, there are so beautiful players in that band. It's really a fantastic band and wonderful players, but quite hard life.
So, and you mentioned that in Austria there are 3 champion section brass bands, and in terms of developing, how is the system of rehearsal in Austria? Because in Germany, most of the bands, I will say 95-98% of the bands that are just project bands. They met over the year 3-4 times. One weekend they play a concert and that's it. Do you rehearse with Red Eagle and with CatchBasin like regularly, kind of regular, I mean once a month, twice a month, every week, you know, or is also getting together for different projects?
So with CatchBasin, I'm rehearsing the whole year. I start in beginning of October, and then rehearsals are going through till July. And I'm rehearsing at least one time a week, on Friday afternoon, 3 hours. Very often I rehearse Friday afternoon, 3 hours, Saturday from 10 to 1, and then Saturday afternoon from 3 to 5. So it's really, I really work very, very hard with the young. This is the reason why they sound so beautiful. And with
Of course.
there
are not other way, right?
But you have to play together to find. And then with Red Eagle, it's different because it's not. I would like to rehearse through the whole year, but it's not possible. So we do in autumn. We do the national competition. So we start in September rehearse through September and October. And then the competition is end of October or beginning of November. Then there's a little break. Then we do a Christmas project, rehearsing 2 or 3 weeks, and then playing the concert. Then it's a break of maybe 2-3 months, and then we're starting rehearsing for the summer. This year is different because we started in January to do some sectionals for preparing for Malmö. But this now is hard for the band. So we're rehearsing since February till end of April for Malmö. Then it's 2 weeks break, and then we start our rehearsals for the summer concerts. So it's quite a lot of busy work, and lots of our players are music teachers. Some professionals in orchestras, and then but we also have people in regular jobs, so they're working 40 hours a week and rehearsals and practicing. It's not only the rehearsing. There's a lot of practicing at home. So yeah, it's brass band playing costs a lot of time and needs a lot of passion. But it's worth it. So
it's totally worth it.
Yeah, it's so. I often think, what am I doing? So it's most of my time I spend with going for new pieces, rehearsing, preparing, whatever. So it's no money, nothing. I get no paid. Nothing. And sometimes people in rehearsal, they're missing 10 people, and you think, oh no, why? Maybe I should stop. But then when you bring a new piece onto the concert, then you know why you do it, because it blasts you.
But so it is for me, it is admirable, the passion that you have for the work you are doing. It is really kind of, you can see that it's burning inside for that. And I mean, Red Eagle Tirol, you say you have some breaks, but it's kind of beside the Europeans this year. It's kind of regularly the work you are doing. Of course, with some weeks or months of break, but it's kind of that is different than in Germany. In Germany, as I say, there are 4 weekends a year, and probably that's it. But that is interesting that you have a more regular rhythm. And with the kids, my question is: you say you rehearse Friday and Saturday every week?
No, not every. So every week on Friday. Okay. This is fixed, and then maybe every. So now before the competition, it's going more and more Fridays and Saturdays. This year it's really hard for me because I have 2 bands. So I sometimes have Friday afternoon Catch Basin, then on Friday evening RET. And then the whole Saturday RET, and then sometimes on Sunday Catch Basin. So it's really will be tough 2 months now till the competition.
So Andreas, one question for you. It is, what consumes more energy, playing or conducting?
Playing.
Really? For you?
Yeah. For me.
Okay.
For me, absolutely.
That is interesting.
This really is, when I'm conducting, I can be, so I go to rehearsal and I'm really tired, and then I think, oh, I cannot go through that. And I start rehearsing, and after 5 minutes, I am full of energy, full of power. There's no, it's very easy for me. So when I'm conducting, I am in the music and nothing else is around me. When I'm playing, sometimes I have really weird ideas in my head, which I don't like, but this never happens when I'm conducting.
Nice.
Very good.
That's very nice. So, well, we are coming into the end, and we want to thank you, Andreas Lackner, very, very much for having taken the time. We know that it's in Austria, it's 11 p.m. right now, and we are very happy to have the opportunity to spend this hour with you, talking about your work with brass bands, and also a little bit of the brass band scene in Austria. Was, I think, a very interesting hour. And thank you, Andreas. I don't know if you have any last message that you want to share with us.
Thank you for having me here, and yeah, go for your ideas. If you go for it, don't wait. Go for it. Do it.
Yeah, I love that. After talking to you, I'm inspired.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Then thank you very much for everyone on the other side, and thank you for being there and for sharing with us this hour. Thank you, Andrea. Thank you, David, as always, and we will see you next week with episode 145. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.